Hey, this is Brandon, aka Fling with DFS Army, and this is your Week 2 NFL Weekend Review. Milley Maker review is what we're going to start with, so let's do it. All right, guys, and before I jump into the Milley Maker review, the main Milley on the main slate, we actually obviously we started off the year with a Milley Maker takedown. Week 1, actual winning the $1 million with the DFS Army VIP, but we really had back-to-back. Thursday night, start of Week 2. There was another Milley takedown. Of course, this is a showdown slate, so there was a split. But shout out to Mason 25.95 for winning basically $60,000. So absolutely crushed it. It was a great week all around. There was a lot of takedowns, $2,000, $3,000 wins, and then of course we had high top fade here, winning $20,000 as well in the flea second place. So really good week for DFS Army VIPs. Back-to-back millies to start the year, of course, winning those contests. And then, guys, this is the last day for the code Milley for 20% off any subscription, celebrating the Milley Maker takedown last week, winning the $1 million from Rotom Wash. And, he couldn't have been more thankful, obviously, to Geek for all the videos over the years. You can become a DFS Army VIP right now for 20% off for any subscription. I can't tell you guys how good of a deal this is. To be able to get this subscription 20% off for life, to be able to have that and not just be 20% off the first month, like that's an incredible deal. You got to get in while you can. I will put this link in the video description, but it's going to be promo code Milley at checkout. So let's go ahead and jump into the Milley Maker review. And guys, if you are here, you like this kind of content, go ahead and smash that like button for me, please. But the Milley Maker, what took it down was a very contrarian build here with Russell Wilson, double stack, Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, and a Jake Ferguson bring back. So this lineup was crazy because you got Russell Wilson at less than 1% ownership, Wan'Dale Robin at less than 1% ownership, Malik Neighbors at 6%. So, you really right there, we got between those two, we got under 10% ownership for three players. And then, of course, Jake Ferguson, contrarian as well, 6%. I think one takeaway for me with this is Dallas is not going to have a good defense this year. They obviously traded away Micah Parsons, so this is no surprise. So we have to be thinking about Dallas each and every week, their stacks. So you play the Dak side, obviously, with, Lamb, Pickens, Ferguson. But, you have to think about the other side. Can the team they're going against, do they have that big playability? Obviously, you see it here with Russell Wilson. We know he throws the moon balls and deep balls, got a pretty deep ball, and, hit Malik Neighbors, hit Wan'Dale Robinson, and, was able to bring Jake Ferguson as a bring back. I believe that game, was 77 total points. So really good stuff there for that main stack, but we also had a couple stacks, some secondary stacks. And that's one of the things that, we found through back testing at DFS Army. You want the secondary stacks as well, because they end up in the winning Milley Maker build very often. So we had another one here, Christian McCaffrey, and the defense correlation is king, and there was a ton of it in this lineup. And then there was a little ping pong stack here between Amon-Ra St. Brown and Rome Odunze. These were plays, again, that were given out on Tournament Tactics. This was a game, obviously, that we had talked about targeting Detroit and Chicago Tournament Tactics crew on Friday. So, guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. They go live every Friday. You want to hit that notification bell so you don't miss those episodes. So, a lot of correlation, pretty crazy. I think 8 players were stacked total. There was just the one-off was Jonathan Taylor with 32 points. But yeah, I think 8 total players were stacked between those 3 games, those 3 stacks, and was like 225 points. So just crazy. And then the ownership was really low here, 76%. And this is something that we found through back testing. And obviously, if you've watched the Milley Maker streams, you want to be contrarian to take down a contest like this. We'll have a few times a year where there will be a chalk smash for sure, and it'll be a chalky lineup. But I think if you're running an optimizer, if you're trying to set up the domination station like we have at DFS Army, we found that setting it lower and lower, like 100%, 110%, really helps you give yourself a chance to take down one of these tournaments. Week 1, it was 96% total team ownership. Here, we're seeing 76%. So 260 points. And I mean, this is really crazy. So he scored 260 points. Second place was 240. So he absolutely just scorched this contest, scorched the entire field. We do see that a couple times a year in the Milley Maker where someone will just have almost hit the optimal lineup. Just 200,000 player combinations in this contest. And you'll see that over the course of the year. Someone a couple times will just kind of just torch the rest of the field. And we certainly saw that here. Not flames in every spot. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey did enough, but most of this lineup hit. We had Russell Wilson hit 6x his salary. We had Neighbors 5x his salary. Amon-Ra, St. Brown 6x his salary. Roma Dunze 7x. So that's kind of one of the things. The entire lineup hit 5.2x. But you don't always have to nail every single spot. Like, you don't have to be perfect. As long as you get a few guys that are, going to hit over 5x their salary and, one to get 6 to 7x, you really can kind of carry some of these, like, lower scores from, like, a Christian McCaffrey. Like, you would think 22, that's not really enough for, him to be in the Milley Maker build at only 3x his salary. But by some of these other scores, certainly carried it. And just overall a really good lineup. I would say one thing I like about this, and we'll see, we're going to look at some Milley Maker mass multi-entry top DFS players. And this is something that I think we do see a lot. You want to kind of reframe your mind and think, like a Russell Wilson stack. Yeah, we see Russell Wilson and we see the sacks and we see just a lot of the boneheaded decisions like we did in the overtime. But oftentimes it's this cheap quarterback stack that's unowned that really allows you to have the ceiling for the rest of the lineup when you get studs like Jonathan Taylor and Amon-Ra in the lineup and Christian McCaffrey and Malik Neighbors that can, you can really jam in these studs. So you kind of have a stars and scrubs approach. And you need that stack to hit, and then everything around it, has a chance. But I think you kind of give yourself the most likely chance that if that stack does hit, you've got enough stars that you have the kind of ceiling that you need to win a contest like this. Russell Wilson, only 5,100, Wandale, 4,400, Jake Ferguson, 3,800. So there's 4 pieces in this stack, and 3 of them are cheap. And then, it's just really the stars the rest of the way. So let's take a look at his exposures. KJK003 had 150 lineups. This was kind of surprising to me, not super unique in a lot of his builds. So this one was very contrarian, but clearly ate a lot of chalk because 70% of the builds being unique on a full slate. Not really a ton. We see Need Lunch Money. DFS Pro got 149 lineups that were unique. So kind of wanted to take a quick look at some of his exposures. And by the way, I get asked this quite a bit. This is courtesy of Fantasy Labs. They've got this information for us. Okay. So let's see, were there any big stands? At wide receiver, a lot of Calvin Ridley. And, you probably didn't want that, right? And honestly, not even a lot of Malik Neighbors and Wandale Robinson. So that's kind of crazy. And that's always interesting to me. So let's go to quarterback, see how much Russell Wilson. So sometimes it's just about being lucky. So not way over the field on Russell Wilson, and specifically in this Milley Maker. Let's be honest. Like a lot of times, it's about being lucky. So not a ton of Russell Wilson. Wasn't high on Russell Wilson. Was just field weight with Neighbors, just over the field with Wan'Dale Robinson. Was high on Ridley, who failed essentially. Even on the field on Marquise Brown, even with the field with CeeDee Lamb. So in a lot of ways, just hit the nuts with one lineup. Was high on Christian McCaffrey, high on Devin Achane, over the field on Chase Brown. Had a lot of Josh Allen. I had a lot of Josh Allen too. And by the way, stay tuned for my Milley Maker review, or my weekend review for cash at the end. I'm going to do my cash game review. Wasn't a good week if you play Josh Allen in anything, including cash. Let's actually take a look. Let's kind of switch gears over to Need Lunch Money. Look at some of his top lineups now. Need Lunch Money is a DFS pro, placed highly in this contest. So his top lineup was at 41 and made $6,800. So won $2,500 and just consistent 41, 46, 50. So 2K, 2,500. So it was a good day for Need Lunch Money. And a Russell Wilson single stack with Wan'Dale Robinson, 223 points. So he had Chase, he had Achane, he had ETN. ETN did good, but not enough. And then Puka had a good this is kind of interesting, his build, because he had both Puka and Devontae Adams in the lineup, but no Stafford in this one. So that's kind of how that goes sometimes. Dak with a Javonte and Ferguson stack and a Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson bring back. So some interesting, different, unique builds, of course. And yeah, we're seeing here 149 out of 150 of his builds were unique. And then this was a Russell Wilson double stack with no bring back here and that was in 50th place. Let's take a look at his exposures. See, did he have a lot of Russell Wilson? Did he have a lot of Neighbors? So he was over the field on Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson. Had a lot of Marquise Brown, and he failed, obviously. That was kind of the story of the day. I understood the Marquise Brown play. But unfortunately, these chalk wide receivers, they do often fail. And really just like 2% Russell Wilson. So it was just kind of having enough of him, 2%, in the right construction to able to get those several lineups at the top of the leaderboards and have a really good day. Let's see anything that really stands out. So, he's basically field weight with Shamar Chase. I think being 2x the field on Malik Neighbors and same thing on Wan'Dale Robinson, having those 3 Russell Wilson stacks, that really was what was the difference between, having a negative day and a positive day. Positive Puka, Devontae Adams, a lot of T. Higgins. So it looks like he was just filled weight on Chase, and I like that thought process here from Need Lunch Money. Like, yeah, so let's be filled weight on Chase, but let's be quadruple the field on T. Higgins because, T. Higgins may be the guy you need. That may be the leverage play. And just pretty flat here. It looks like a lot of receivers, a lot of running backs. Just picking a few spots to really go above the field. Trey McBride, a good amount of Jake Ferguson. So, yeah, had the right pieces of that Dallas and Giants game. Good amount of Devin Achane. Even with Christian McCaffrey. I'm guessing probably didn't have any Derrick Henry. Looks like Derrick Henry was the fade. I'm not seeing Derrick Henry. 5% Derrick Henry. And yeah, oftentimes that's just what it takes. Just like avoiding a landmine like Derrick Henry, where 14% of the field had him. He had 5%. So the fade that you needed, obviously. And then one thing I was curious about, how much Stafford did he have? Because only 2% Stafford. So not a ton of Stafford. Interesting. Very interesting. So let's take a look at sliders here. Actually want to take a look at C-Sears real quick. C-Sears, this guy, it's kind of what I was talking about last week. You can play this a couple different ways. You could play, like have a diversified portfolio, or, you can pick a couple spots. So like, even then, if you have a diversified portfolio, you can pick a few spots where you really want to take your stance. And then the other end of that spectrum, like we saw with Rotom Wash last week, the DFS Army Milley Maker winner, was, you will see these spots where players like C-Sears, who's really sharp, by the way. I've seen his builds before. We reviewed him on this show, and he's had a lot of success, almost taking down the Milley Maker, being very close, being top 10. But you can see he will take very hard stance, pick some spots where he really, wants to be over the field. And I mean, it's crazy that he had this much Adunze, this much, Neighbors, Amon-Ra, and wasn't able to take it down, but was close enough to get close. And then you see, the guy who won it hardly had any of these guys that you needed and took it down. So there is some luck involved, but also like when you have 98% DJ Moore and he fails, like that's also why he was able to get high. But if he had maybe the same amount of Adunze and DJ Moore, maybe he would have won it. I don't know. Clearly was all in on the Caleb stacks, 100% Caleb. So yeah, he chose that game to stack, and had a good amount of Neighbors, of course, who you needed, and Amon-Ra, but just too much DJ Moore there. But I want to take a look at sliders because he is a DFS Army VIP, and he has done very well in this. Much like C-Sears, he's had a lot of lineups be near the top. So I wanted to see what sliders did with his exposures on this slate before we wrap this up. So sliders here, his top lineup was a Jared Goff double with Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, and no ring back, it looks like. Had Christian McCaffrey, James Cook, who was one of the best backs on the slate. And really, not enough of the field was on James Cook. If you had a lot of James Cook, you probably had a great day. If you had like Amon-Ra, Dunze, those guys probably had a great day. Juju crushed this lineup, but I understood the Juju play. I had a good amount of Juju myself. We'll have to look at his exposure, see how much he had. I mean, I had a decent amount, not a ton, but anytime you get like a chalk wide receiver, I just love looking for a leverage play like Juju Smith-Schuster, because obviously, he's cheap, and that's one way to leverage the field is this chalk wide receiver, Hollywood Brown, who fails. And, maybe he fails because Juju gets all the tutties. But in this case, obviously, they both failed, and you didn't want any of them. But he had also Goff and Gibbs here with Amon-Ra and Laporta. No bringbacks so far. Dak plus Pickens. There's a Dunze. Caleb plus a Dunze with an Amon-Ra bring back. So, gosh, in the first half of that game, it looked like Caleb stacks were going to be certainly what you needed. So he puts that first one in at 57, second one is 653. Let's take a look at his exposures. So yeah, just a little bit to Juju, 4%. Double the field on Malik Neighbors. A lot of Amon-Ra, so really nailed that. Over the field on Marquise Brown. I liked the Devonta play, just didn't get there. Eagles just didn't have to do a whole lot. Love the Adams play. JSN, same with him. Just over the field on Chase, little under on Lamb. Higgins, same thing with need lunch money. So deciding, Higgins is too low of own, especially for 6,100. Maybe maybe, who knows, if Burrow doesn't get hurt, maybe that play gets there. It certainly seemed like it was a chase day. A little bit of Yoshi Boss. So yeah, nothing crazy exposure-wise, just a couple spots where he decided, he wanted to be over 30%. Marquise Brown, Amon-Ra. And then in the 20s, T. Higgins right about 30%. A lot of different wide receivers. Christian McCaffrey, a little under on CMC. Too much Kyron. It kind of sucked. I played Kyron as well just because he had a good prop projection. And he was only 6,300. But certainly didn't work out here. Chase Brown and Brian Thomas Jr. That was, and Kyron. Those three just crushed me yesterday. Yeah, and then Joe Burrow. And, it's one of those things where you want to play the Burrow stacks. You wanted to play the Bengals stacks because they're not going to have a good defense this year. And they got so much firepower on offense. But, yeah, anytime you have a guy like Joe Burrow, that much, you're heavily invested on the slate. You're going to typically lose money, but Sliders was able to make money by putting that one lineup in the top 100, just outside the top 50. So really good stuff. And, we'll be continuing to check his MME strategy. And I've said it before on this show, Sliders, a future Milley Maker winner, because I've watched him so many times put lineups in the top 50, in the top 25, in the top 10. I know his day is coming. So good on Slider. So let's go ahead and go to the cash review part of the show. Unfortunately, was not the best cash day for me. That's kind of how these things go sometimes. I think overall, we were on a lot of the right plays, but anytime like you pay up at quarterback and, because of that floor, because you typically have a good floor, Josh Allen was going to average 20, 25, fantasy points over the course of the season per week. But he will have a couple weeks where, he's going to score 11 points. He's going to score 10 points. And when that happens, you're just not going to cash those weeks. But he brings a good enough of a floor that most of the time I'm going to play a Josh Allen. I'm going to play Jalen Hurts. I'm going to play a Lamar Jackson because of the floor that they bring. And, I'll be able to hit the cash line most weeks and, be profitable in cash games as we were last year doing this and the year before. Really, the decision point for me came down between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I chose wrong. I chose Josh Allen. Lamar would have been the play and, would have hit the cash line. So I think that said, Christian McCaffrey was in a really good spot. We expected a ton of opportunities going against New Orleans, so I really liked him in this spot. He did well for cash. Chase Brown did not. And, I think especially with Drake Browning coming in, I think we need to rethink Chase Brown. He had such a good floor the second half of last year. We just haven't seen it through 2 games. The offensive line isn't blocking enough. And then now with Burrow not in there, it's just going to be an avoid for me. Hollywood Brown, I think price-wise, ownership-wise, this was a good choice, but certainly didn't get there. And really, this just those 3 spots that, really kind of crushed us. I think Olave at 4,900 did okay. Calvin Ridley at 4,900, he did okay as well. But just not enough double-digit scores from my cash lineup here. Jamar Chase, I really wanted to fit him in and, not go with the 3 running backs. And I think overall that was a good choice. But when Josh Allen scores 11 points and Chase Brown scores 8 points and, you don't even get 20 points from, one of your running backs plus your quarterback who, are supposed to be bringing that floor, that's how you're not going to hit the cash line. We paid down at tight end. That worked well. We paid down at defense. That was fine. 4 points, of course, from my defense is certainly enough. But, yeah, it's one of those throwaway cash weeks. And, of course, we will get back to it next week and get back to the drawing board to get on the winning side. So that's going to do it for this Milley Maker review. Again, guys, Code Milley. This is the last day for it. 20% off any subscription as long as you're a DFS Army member. It's such a great deal. So check that out. Sign up. You'll get access, obviously, to the domination station that we've seen that helped Rotom Wash win. The Milley helped Mason 2595 have the showdown takedown for the Milley as well. So, and the cheat sheet, the coach's notes, and all that. So get in that while you can. Last day for that. So that's going to do it for this Milley Maker review, this weekend review. We will see you all next week.